The next guest on the program today is someone who is extremely knowledgeable, not only about women's health, but about digital health. She is a principal at 7 Wire Ventures, who everyone in our community should know about. If you don't know about it, you probably are new to our community. They are one of the leading digital health venture funds in the world. They were behind the start and the scaling of Livongo that sold to Teladoc for $18.2 billion. And they're also the primary factory, if you will, and brainstorm around the newest unicorn from in healthcare, Transcarent. And so Tiffany has a tremendous interest in women's health and is on the board of the Women's Health Tech Initiative, which, if you'd like to join, contact either Ansley Bowen or Amy West from the lab as well. Tiffany, welcome to the program.
So much, Stan, for having me on and for saying all those kind words. I apologize that my background looks like it's reversed, but everyone should know what it says. But thank you very much.
It's not reversed to everyone else. It's good with us.
Okay, great. Perfect.
So you're good. And first of all, it's just great to have you on the program and just excited to meet you. And again, everyone who wants to meet Tiffany, do look at her LinkedIn. It's on the chat. First, if you could tell us a little bit about your investment philosophy when it comes to early stage digital health companies. I think our community would love to know about what you personally are thinking, and then also 7 Wire as a firm is thinking when it's looking at supporting and really having a connected healthcare consumer product line.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are at 7 Wire, we are a healthcare venture fund. So we only look at healthcare opportunities. And even within healthcare, we're really focused on digital health and tech-enabled healthcare services investments. Our investment thesis is pretty straightforward, I think, and it's really centered around consumer centricity and making sure that healthcare consumers are equipped to make decisions that engender a better experience with better outcomes at lower costs. So everything that we invest in has to directly touch a patient, is another way to put it. We're primarily Series A investors, although we will do occasional seeds and sometimes even company formations. And then we can stretch all the way up to Series C for new investments, but primarily we're Series A, and we almost always lead or co-lead our investments. So we take a pretty active role on boards, and we generally can be pretty helpful with commercial strategic relationships as well.
Yeah, it's clearly what we've seen in our working with 7 Wire over the last 10 years, which is amazing, just the amount of support that the firm does give to its portfolio companies as partners. And so our audience would love to know more about your criteria and what are you looking for when evaluating any kind of potential investment in digital health, or especially those focused on wearables and AI, which is the theme for today's symposium, and connected health solutions. What kind of criteria do you like to see when evaluating these folks?
Obviously, it's a much more complex decision, but I would say core to kind of how we evaluate new opportunities is maybe 5 things. One, of course, we have to look at the market and think about, is the total addressable market large enough? And completely understand, especially for early stage companies starting out and carving out a niche, but understanding that after that kind of initial crawl stage, that there are things to walk and run towards. So better understanding the market opportunity and the size around that is really important to us. And we also take into account whether or not there are regulatory or other kind of industry tailwinds that can help make the go-to-market strategy a lot more efficient or faster. As we all know, sales cycles within healthcare are always long. So whenever we feel like there are good tailwinds that can help accelerate that, it's always helpful for us. We also spend a lot of time just understanding how your solution is differentiated and what your competitive moat is. Because we're very focused on healthcare, I would say we tend to see a lot of companies that are probably doing similar things or adjacent things to what you are building. So a lot of times we really do want to understand, why is your solution different from your core competitors or even your adjacent competitors? And then we spend a lot of time on business model. What kind of traction, growth do you have? Even if it's early stage, what are the pilots that you've signed? How have they been going? And then also importantly, especially if we're talking about wearables or some kind of device component, just how should we understand the unit economics? I think understanding that is very important to us as we think about just the scalability and the sustainability of your business. The next one is kind of maybe a nice to have, but it's always helpful if you have some kind of demonstrable ROI in terms of cost savings or better patient outcomes. This is probably not a first conversation, but further on, we do kind of want to understand what are some of the proof points. And then last thing, we always love getting to know the team. Obviously, given that we're pretty active investors, we do want to make sure that we can have a productive and helpful and positive relationship, and understanding the team dynamics is super important to us as well.
That's absolutely amazing. It's so obviously very thoughtful and a really detailed analysis set that you're walking through when you look at these companies. One of the things you talked about was empowering consumers. How do you assess whether a digital health company is really empowering consumers to make that informed decision and stay connected to their healthcare data?
Yeah, I think a lot of that tends to tie back into some of the ROI or some of the outcomes that we're seeing, even if it's on a small population. So because of that, we do tend to invest in companies that already have some commercial relationships with enterprises, because it allows us to answer that very question. And so a lot of times we are looking for NPS scores, just kind of customer feedback on the user perspective. But then we're also trying to see if there are clinical outcomes that you can point us towards. Best case scenario is if you are able to provide a study that's done in conjunction with a customer that's been signed off by the customer. And again, that all sounds very formal, but oftentimes it is okay if it's a small cohort of patients, as long as the leading indicators are positive. I think that goes a long way for us.
That's a big one to look at. Yeah, that's obviously got a lot of weight behind it. And so last question as we wrap up, and I think probably the biggest question of the day, which is, Tiffany, you're seeing some amazing companies. You got not only what you've already started and what 7Wire has in its portfolio, which are some of the clear leaders in digital health, and the win rate with what you're doing is stunning. But when you look at advice and you start talking about with folks and entrepreneurs that pull you aside and ask for advice, in this ecosystem and in this current time frame, it's a tricky labyrinth that these companies have to go through. What kind of advice are you giving entrepreneurs that are trying to develop digital health solutions that support the informed and connected consumer?
Yeah, I think there's maybe two. I would say the first one is, a lot of times during pitches, I often find myself wishing that companies would spend a little bit more time talking about differentiator from competitors, and really helping illustrate what you think the right competitive set is, both direct competitors and maybe adjacent competitors that may be coming into your space. I think the more well-informed you can make us, the better, because you don't want us to make assumptions of who your competitors are. And a lot of times for investors in a first conversation, it's very fast and it's very easy for us to misunderstand what you are building and what your competitive set is. So taking, just a couple minutes to really explain that out to us goes a long way, because a lot of times those preconceived notions can be really hard to erase once it sets into our mind. I think the second thing is, even for early stage companies, really understanding the unit economics is also really important to us, especially in this market environment. And yes, I think the market is getting better. However, I would say for all of our companies, we are very focused on scalability and sustainability. And so understanding how the gross margins will eventually help make your business get to break even. I think even at the earlier stage of companies, that's super important to us, and becoming just table stakes for us as we start understanding businesses. So I wouldn't underestimate understanding those gross margins even in early days.
That's great advice, and that is so true that, those early models really do, unless they're massively restructured, do tend to scale the way they started early on. So really well done.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tiffany, so much for joining
Of
us
course.
today, and
Thank you,
really looking forward
Stan.
to working with you. We're looking forward to working with you on the Women's Health Tech Initiative Board.
Thank you very much.